And if we lose the moral and spiritual standards in talking about identity, then we're going to end up with just a more diverse empire, a more diverse predatory capitalism.
Yeah. Philosopher, author, and activist Dr. Cornel West was on Mehdi Hasan's show on Peacock and gave a dismantling of the so-called diversity of Joe Biden's cabinet. And also in the second clip, he gets into a little more diversity of thought and discusses religion. But before we get there, here's the first clip on Cornel West discussing Joe Biden's cabinet.
Let's talk about the people Biden is appointing. You just touched on an important issue. They're very qualified, clearly very clever, especially compared to the current bunch they're replacing. They're also very diverse. For example, Fox News is reporting that Biden might select former CIA veteran Darrell Blocker as his new CIA director. He would be the first black man to run the CIA, and he would be working directly under the first woman to be director of national intelligence, Avril Haines. In addition, you've got the first all-female White House communications team, as I just mentioned, the first female Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. She's one of 4 women on Biden's top economic team, including a former Princeton colleague of yours, African-American economist Cecilia Rouse, who will run the Council of Economic Advisors. Now, they're all undeniably groundbreaking firsts. But some on the left say, no, it's meaningless identity politics, a distraction from their views, from their ideology. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I would say it's not meaningless. It's significant to have a variety of different kinds of people on the inside. But it's not their racial or gender or sexual orientation or identity that is the major marker. I want to know what kind of integrity they have. I want to know what kind of analysis and vision they have. I want to know what kinds of concerns do they have for poor people. Yeah, I'm part of the legacy of Martin King, brother, till the day I die. And poor people, working people, no matter what color, not just here, but around the world, in Ethiopia, in West Bank, in Gaza, in Tel Aviv, in Guatemala. This is a spiritual and a moral matter. That's why when Shakespeare talks about rottenness, my brother, he's saying that the corruption and the greed cuts much deeper than just identity politics. It's a human thing. And that's why predatory capitalism, that's why militarism comes out of the Pentagon. These are not PC categories. These are actual realities that are crushing precious human beings of all colors. And if we lose the moral and spiritual standards in talking about identity, then we're going to end up with just a more diverse empire, a more diverse predatory capitalism, a more diverse a patriarchal orientation, because, you know, women can fit into patriarchal identities quickly in the same way black folk can fit into white supremacist one. So that I never say it's meaningless. I do want to see diversity, but I want to see diversity at the deeper moral and spiritual level of concern with poor and working people.
I think that's very well put. I mean, people forget Donald Trump appointed a woman to run the CIA. It doesn't mean that the CIA was suddenly a progressive institution overnight.
Like always, Cornel West absolutely nails it here. Diversity of experience is important. Those unique experiences based on culture, based on how society treats you, based on how you look, those experiences are important to represent in positions of power. But you have to go deeper than that. Where is the diversity of thought? Where is the anti-war voice in Joe Biden's cabinet? Doesn't exist. Where's the Marxist? Just a critique of capitalism. That's all Marxism is. Where is that Marxist voice in the Joe Biden cabinet? Doesn't exist. Where is just the social democratic voice? Like a Bernie Sanders style approach. Where is that in the Joe Biden cabinet? Isn't there. It's a bunch of neoliberals. Where is the working class voice? Where is the union leader? Again, it isn't there. This is the exact same approach that Barack Obama took over his 8 years. And after those 8 years, you got Donald Trump. What do you think is going to happen with the exact same approach that Joe Biden is taking? There has to be a completely, a completely different shift. There has to be a different approach to these issues. There has to be, at the very least, people in there to voice a different opinion. But all that's happening is a lot of really Barack Obama appointments. A lot of people that were in or around Barack Obama over those 8 years are being put into positions of power in the Joe Biden administration. It's the exact same approach. Yet they're going to expect a different result, and it's going to be the exact same result. In 4 years, if there isn't, a massive turnaround or a completely different approach with Joe Biden compared to, say, Barack Obama in 2008, you're going to get Democrats annihilated in 2 years in the midterms. And then forget about in 4 years. There has to be a different approach. And Cornel West brings up predatory capitalism, militarism, discussing how, a more diverse empire on the surface with identity politics, a more diverse empire is not progress. It is just putting a different face on the exact same approach. And that reminds me of this comic that I see all the time. This floats around on Twitter quite often. You see here an American drone dropping a bomb. They say the next ones will be sent by a woman. Really makes you feel like you're a part of history. This is the exact approach that the Biden administration is taking. Just the exact same positions, exact same policies, exact same kinds of people, but just a different face. Now, Cornel West goes a little deeper on the lack of diversity of thought in positions of power, and also gets into religion and how that impacts his view on this.
One of the things Obama was so worried about, and what Biden has been so concerned about this year, was being tagged as a socialist, the dreaded S word. You're a proud democratic socialist. Why do you think so many Americans recoil from that word? You even had House Democrats blaming socialism for down ballot losses this year in places like Florida.
I mean, there is a association of socialism with the Soviet Union, association of socialism with repression and regimentation. And so you understand that kind of misunderstanding. It's sad that is still often something that's taken place. But the kind of democratic socialism I'm talking about was the ways in which Helen Keller was a democratic socialist, the way in which John Dewey was a democratic socialist, the ways in which Reinhold Niebuhr was a democratic socialist, the ways in which Martin Luther King Jr. was a democratic socialist. That has nothing to do with Soviet Union. Has nothing to do with repression, nothing to do with regimentation. But in the minds of most people, when they say socialist. And for me, it's not really about an ism, just like I was telling Brother Tucker, that as a Christian, I'm just trying to bear witness to a truth and justice that has to do with the least of these, the poor, the persecuted. It has to do with the genius of Hebrew scripture, that spreading of Hesed, that loving kindness to the orphan and widow and fatherless and motherless, and that includes structures. See, the Jesus that I follow went straight into the temple and ran out the money changers. Well, what was the temple of that day? It was a huge place. It was Hollywood, Harvard, White House, Pentagon. That's where the temple was, to run out the money changers, those who had idols that overlooked the humanity of the weak and the vulnerable. That's why Jesus was crucified, because he ran the money changers out of the temple. So that's Wall Street, that's White House, that's Pentagon, that's Hollywood, that's Harvard, that's Yale, even a little Oxford, brother. Even Christchurch, Oxford, where too many of the elites are shaped and molded and don't have enough don't have enough concern with the vulnerable. But not all. Not all. There's some who make it through Oxford.
Someone's been Googling me.
So what Cornel West gets into here is how labels have been misconstrued by the mainstream to simply ignore or dismiss entire schools of knowledge. So whenever socialism is discussed, they have to bring up Soviet Union or Venezuela when there are other representations of socialism in culture, in society. Or when Christianity is discussed, it's often dismissed as being far right or ultra conservative, when in reality, if Jesus Christ were alive today, he would be a communist activist. He fought against those in power, those with wealth. He stood up for the poor. Yet the message of what the Bible actually is trying to teach has been completely misconstrued to attempt to represent the right wing in society, which is ridiculous. So this is why we have to constantly examine how we view the world. Because oftentimes the framing that we are given, and it isn't just, the news media or cable news, but it's culture, it's Hollywood, it's movies, it's TVs, it's everything, it's all around us. So we have to constantly examine how we are being told stories. Constantly examine the framing by which these stories, or these whether it's stories in movies, TV, or how the news is actually told. We have to constantly examine how all of this is told to us, from the framing, from the lens that it is told. So when you do that, you begin to recognize that Cornel West is exactly right. That there are other ways of looking at these issues, and that those ideas are not only not represented in the presidency or in the White House or in politics, but it's also not represented in society as a whole, in culture. Now, there's a lot more to this interview I wish I could have shown, but there's no point in me showing the entire interview. So I'll link to the full discussion below the video with Mehdi Hassan. It is a fantastic discussion. He also goes into Rahm Emanuel and Barack Obama and Cornel West's thoughts on Barack Obama now that Trump is out. So check it out. Great discussion. And as always, anytime Cornel West is on, it's worth showcasing.